So, hello and welcome back yet again to another evening with Dr. Watson and Mr. Sherlock Holmes, where we seem to be spending most of our time with Dr. Watson, and where you'll probably see the light balance just go crazy throughout this entire video. You might get to see outside, though. Maybe. It seems to either want to focus on outside or on me. When it focuses on me, we're blowing out the light balance. When it's focusing on outside, we're also blowing out the light balance, but just in a totally different way. Anyway, it was just too nice of a day not to open the window, and occasionally, maybe you guys can even see little bits of the garden. Maybe. Or maybe you can just see the unicorn, who obviously is not a member of the Sherlock Holmes book, but who I thought just kind of looked like he belonged on the window. I hope everybody is doing good. We've had some ups and downs in weather. I'm back in a tank top and short sleeves. And I think like 2 days ago, I was in long sleeves again, because I live in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, where the weather can change in a heartbeat from snow to sweltering. Weather, what you gonna do? And yes, I fully acknowledge that pretty much every single place I have ever lived and every person I've ever talked to has the same, our weather changes in an instant. It seems to be true everywhere. That's just sort of a truism about weather. Although possibly on the moor, they seem to just talk about how gloomy and gray and rainy it is. So maybe England is different. I don't know. But we're going to be jumping back into The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and we will be reading Chapter 9, which is titled Second Report of Dr. Watson. The Light upon the Moor. Baskerville Hall, October 15th. My dear Holmes, if I was compelled to leave you without much news during the early days of my mission, you must acknowledge that I am making up for lost time, and that events are now crowding thick and fast upon us. In my last report, I ended upon my top note with Barrymore at the window, and now I have quite a budget already, which will, unless I am much mistaken, considerably surprise you. Things have taken a turn which I could not have anticipated. In some ways, they have, within the past 48 hours, become much clearer, and in some ways, they have become more complicated. But I will tell you all, and you shall judge for yourself. Before breakfast on the morning following my adventure, I went down the corridor and examined the room in which Barrymore had been in on the night before. The western window, through which he had stared so intently, has, I noticed, one peculiarity above all other windows in the house. It commands the nearest outlook onto the moor. There is an opening between two trees, which enables one from this point of view to look right down upon it. Well, from every other window, it is only a distant glimpse that can be obtained. It follows, therefore, that Barrymore, since only this window would serve the purpose, must have been looking out for something or somebody upon the moor. The night was very dark, so that I can hardly imagine how he could have hoped to see anyone. It struck me that it was possible that some love intrigue was afoot. That would have accounted for his stealthy movements, and also for the uneasiness of his wife. The man is a striking-looking fellow, very well equipped to steal the heart of a country girl, so that this theory seemed to have something to support it. The opening of the door, which I heard after I returned to my room, might mean that he had gone out to keep some clandestine appointment. So I reasoned with myself in the morning, and I tell you the direction of my suspicions, however much the result may have shown that was unfounded. But whatever the true explanation of Barrymore's movements might be, I felt that the responsibility of keeping them to myself was paramount until I could explain them, but it was more than I could bear. I had an interview with the baronet in his study after breakfast, and I told him everything I had seen. He was less surprised than I expected. I knew that Barrymore walked about nights, and I had a mind to speak to him about it, he said. 2 or 3 times I've heard his steps in the passage, coming and going, right around the hour you named. Maybe he pays a visit every night to that window, I had suggested. Maybe he does. If so, we should be able to shadow him and see what he's after. I wonder what your friend Holmes would do if he were here. I believe he would do exactly what you are now suggesting, I told him. He would follow Barrymore and see what he did. Well then, we'll do it together. But surely he would hear us. The man's kind of deaf, and in any case, we must take our chance. We'll sit up in my room tonight and wait till he goes by. Sir Henry rubbed his hands with pleasure, and it was evident that he hailed the adventure as a relief to his somewhat quiet life on the moor. Sir Henry has been in communication with the architect who prepared the plans for Sir Charles and a contractor from London, so we may expect great changes to begin here soon. There have been decorators and furnishers up from Plymouth, and it's evident our friend has large ideas and means to spare no pain or expense to restore the grandeur of his family. When the house is renovated and refurnished, all that he will need is a wife to make it complete. Between us, there are pretty clear signs that this will not be wanting if the lady is willing, for I have seldom seen a man more infatuated with a woman than he is with our beautiful neighbor, Miss Stapleton. And yet, the course of true love does not run quite as smoothly as one would expect. Today, for example, the surface was broken by a very unexpected ripple, which has caused the Baron considerable annoyance. After the conversation, which I have quoted about Barrymore, Sir Henry put his hat on and prepared to go out. As a matter of course, I did the same. "What? Are you coming, Watson?" he asked, looking at me curiously. "Depends on whether you're going on the moor," I told him. Yes, I am," he said. "Well, you know what my instructions are. I'm sorry to intrude, but you heard how earnestly Holmes insisted that I should not leave you, and especially that you should not go out upon the moor." Sir Henry put his hand on my shoulder and smiled. "My dear fellow," he said, "Holmes, with all of his wisdom, did not foresee some things which have happened since I have been on the moor. You understand me. I'm sure that you are the last man in the world who wants to be a spoil-sport. I have to go alone." That put me in the most awkward position. I was at a loss what to say or what to do, and before I made up my mind, he picked up his cane and was gone. But when I came to think the matter over, my conscience reproached me bitterly for having on any pretext allowed him out of my sight. I imagined what my feelings would be if I had to return to you and confess that some misfortune had occurred through my disregard of your instructions. I assure you, my cheeks flushed at the very thought. It might not even now be too late to overtake him, so I set off at once in the direction of Merripit House. I hurried along the road at top speed without seeing anything of Sir Henry until I came to the point where the moor branches off. There, fearing perhaps I had come in the wrong direction after all, I mounted a hill from which I could command a view. the same hill that is cut into the dark quarry. Then I saw him. He was on the moor-path about a quarter of a mile away, and a lady was by his side who could only be Miss Stapleton. It was clear that there was already an understanding between them, and that they had met by appointment. They were walking slowly in deep conversation, and I saw her making quick little movements of her hands as if she were earnest in what she was saying, while he was listening intently, and once or twice shook his head in strong dissent. I stood amongst the rocks watching them, very puzzled as to what I should do next. Follow them and break their intimate conversation would be an outrage, and yet my clear duty was never for an instant to let him out of my sight. To act like a spy upon a friend was hateful, but I could see no better course than to watch him from the hill and clear my conscience by confessing to him after what I had done. It is true that if any sudden danger had threatened him, I was far too far away to be of any use, and yet I am sure that you will agree with me that the position was quite difficult, and there was nothing I could do. Our friend Sir Henry and the lady had halted on the path and were standing deeply absorbed in conversation when I was suddenly aware I was not the only one witnessing their interview. A wisp of green floating in the air caught my eye, and another glance showed me that it was carried on a stick by a man who was moving along the broken ground. It was Stapleton and his butterfly net. He was much closer to the pair than I was, and appeared to be moving in their direction. At this instant, Sir Henry suddenly drew Miss Stapleton to his side. His arm was around her, but it seemed to me that she was straining away from him with her face turned. He stooped his head to hers, and she raised a hand as if in protest. The next minute, I saw them spring apart and turn quickly around. Stapleton was the cause of the interruption. He was running wildly towards them, his ridiculous net dangling behind. He was gesticulating and almost dancing in excitement in front of the lovers. What the scene meant, I could not imagine, but it seemed to me that Stapleton was abusing Sir Henry, who offered explanations, and that became more angry as Stapleton refused to accept them. The lady stood in quiet silence. Finally, Stapleton turned upon his heel and beckoned in a peremptory way to his sister, who, after a glance at Sir Henry, walked off with her brother. Stapleton's angry gestures showed that the lady was included in his great displeasure. Sir Henry stood for a moment looking after them, and then he walked slowly back the way he had come, his head hanging, the very picture of dejection. What all of this meant, I could not imagine, but I was ashamed to have witnessed such an intimate scene without Sir Henry's knowledge. Therefore I ran down the hill and met him at the bottom. His face was flushed with anger, his brows were wrinkled like one who is at his wit's end. "Hullo, Watson! Where have you dropped from?" he said. "You don't mean to say you came after me in spite of everything?" I explained it all to him. How I had found it impossible to remain behind, how I had followed, how I had witnessed everything that occurred. For an instant his eyes blazed, but my frankness disarmed his anger, and he broke into a rueful laugh. "You would have thought that the middle of the prairie a fairly safe place for a man to be private," he said. "But by thunder, the whole countryside seems to have been out to see me do my wooing, and a poor wooing at that. Where was your seat?" "I was on the hill." "Ah, back row, eh? Well, her brother was right up front. Did you see him come out on us?" I did. "Did he ever strike you as being crazy, this brother of hers?" "Can't say that he did." Dare say not. I always thought him sane enough till today, but you can take it from me that either he or I should be in a straitjacket. What's the matter with me? You've lived near me for a few weeks, Watson. Tell me straight. Is there anything that would prevent me from making a good husband to someone I loved? I don't think so. He can't object to my worldly position, so it must be me that he has this down on. What's he got against me? I've never hurt a man or a woman in my life that I know of, and yet he would not so much as let me touch the tips of her fingers. Did he say that? Oh, yeah, that and a whole lot more. I tell you, Watson, I've only known her a few weeks, but from the very first, I felt she was made for me. And she, too, she was happy when she was with me, and I'll swear to that. There's a light in a woman's eyes that speaks louder than any words, but he's never let us get together. It was only today, for the first time, that I saw a chance of having a few words with her alone. She was happy to meet me, but when she did, it was not love she wanted to talk about, and she wouldn't let me talk about it either. If she could have stopped it anyway. She kept coming back to this was a place of danger, and she would never be happy until I left. I told her, since I had seen her, I was not in any hurry to leave, and if she really wanted me to go, the only way to work it was for her to arrange to go with me. And with that, I offered in so many words to marry her. But before she could even answer, down came this brother of hers, running at us with a face on him like a madman, white with rage, and the light of his eyes was just fury. What was I doing with the lady? How dare I offer her attentions which were distasteful to her? Did I think because I was a baron I could do whatever I liked? If he had not been her brother, I would have known better how to answer him. As it was, I told him that my feelings towards his sister were nothing for me to be ashamed of, and that I hoped that she might honor me and become my wife. That seemed to make nothing any better. So then I lost my temper too, and I answered him rather more hotly than maybe I should have, considering she was right there. And it ended in his going off with her the way you saw, and here I am, as badly puzzled a man as any in the country. So tell me, what does it all mean, Watson? I'll owe you more than I could ever help to pay. I tried one or two explanations, but I was puzzled myself. Our friend's title, his fortune, his age, his character, and his appearance are all in his favor, and I know nothing against him, unless it's his dark fate that runs in his family. That his advances should be rejected so brusquely, without any reference to the lady's own wishes, and that the lady should accept the situation without any protest, is amazing. However, our conjectures were set at rest by a visit from Stapleton himself that very afternoon. He came to offer apologies for his rudeness in the morning, and after a long private interview with Sir Henry in the study, the upshot was that the breach is quite healed, and that we are to go dine at the Merrypit House next Friday. I don't say now that he isn't crazy, said Sir Henry. I can't forget the look in his eyes when he came running at me this morning, but I must allow that no man could make a better apology than he did. Did he explain? I asked. His sister is everything in his life, is what he says. That's natural enough, and I'm glad that he should understand her value. They've always been together, and according to him, he has been a very lonely man with only her as a companion, so that the thought of losing her is quite terrible to him. He had not understood, he told me, that I was becoming attached to her, but when he saw with his own eyes that it was true, and that she might be taken away from him, it gave him such a shock that for a time he was just not responsible for what he said or did. He said that he was sorry for everything that passed, and that he recognized how foolish and selfish it was that he should imagine that he could hold a beautiful woman like her to himself for her entire life. If she had to leave, he would rather it was to a neighbor like myself than anyone else, but it would be a blow to him, and it would take him some time before he could prepare himself for it. He withdrew all opposition upon his part if I could promise for 3 months to let everything lie and be content with cultivating her friendship without claiming her love. I said that I would, and the matter rests. So that's one of our mysteries cleared up. It is something to have touched bottom anywhere in this bog in which we're floundering, at least. We now know why Stapleton looked with disfavor upon his sister's suitor, even when the suitor was such an eligible one as Sir Henry. And now I pass on to another thread, which I have extracted out of the tangled skein, the mystery of the sobs, the night, and of the tear-stained face of Mrs. Barrymore, of the secret journey of the butler to the western lattice window. Congratulate me, Holmes, and tell me I have not disappointed you as an agent. Tell me that you do not regret the confidence with which you showed me when you sent me down here. All of these things have been one night's work and have been thoroughly cleared up. I've said by one night's work, but truthfully, it was 2 nights, for on the very first we drew an entire blank. I sat up with Sir Henry in his rooms until almost 3 o'clock in the morning, but no sound of any sort did we hear except for the chiming of the clock on the stairs. It was a melancholy vigil, and it ended by us each falling asleep on our chairs. Thankfully, we were not discouraged, and we determined to try it again. The next night, we lowered the lamp and sat there smoking cigarettes without making a sound. It's incredible how slow the hours crawled by. And yet we were helped through it by the same sort of patient interest which the hunter must feel as he watches the trap into which he hopes game might wander. The hour of 1, then 2, and we had almost for the second time given up in despair, when in an instant we both sat upright in our chairs with all of our senses keenly on alert once again. We had heard the creak of a step in the hall. Stealthily, we heard it pass along until it died off in the distance. Then Sir Henry gently opened his door, and we were off in pursuit. Already our man had gone around the gallery, and the corridor was in darkness. Softly we stole along until we had come into the other wing. We were just in time to catch a glimpse of the tall, black-bearded figure, shoulders rounded as he went tiptoeing down the passage. Then he passed through the same door as before, and the light of the candle framed it in the darkness and shot one single yellow beam across the gloom of the corridor. We shuffled cautiously towards it, trying out every plank before daring to put our weight upon them. We had taken the precaution of leaving our boots behind us, but even so, the old boards snapped and creaked beneath our feet. Sometimes it seemed impossible that he should fail to hear our approach. Thankfully, the man is fortunately rather deaf, and he was entirely preoccupied in what he was doing. When at last we reached the door and peeped through it, we found him crouching at the window, candle in hand, his white face pressed up against the pane, exactly the way I saw him 2 nights ago. We had arranged no plan of campaign, but the Baron is a man to whom the most direct way is always the best and most natural. He walked into the room, and as he did so, Barrymore jumped from the window with a sharp hiss of breath and stood, livid and trembling, in front of us. His dark eyes, glaring out of his white face, were full of horror and surprise as he gazed from Sir Henry to me. "What are you doing here, Barrymore?" said Sir Henry. Nothing, sir. His agitation was so great that he could hardly speak, and the shadows sprang up and down from the shaking of his candle. It was the window, sir. I go around at night to see that they're all fastened. On the second floor? Yes, sir, all the windows. Look here, Barrymore, said Sir Henry. We have made up our minds to have the truth out of you, so it will save you trouble to tell it sooner rather than later. Come now, no lies. Why were you at the window? The fellow looked at us in a helpless way and wrung his hands like one who is in the last extremity of doubt and misery. I wasn't doing any harm, sir. I was holding a candle to the window. And why were you holding a candle to the window? Don't ask me, Sir Henry. Don't ask me that. I give you my word that it's not my secret, and I can't tell. It's concerned no one but me. I wouldn't try to keep it from you. A sudden idea hit me, and I took the candle from the trembling hand of the butler. He must have been holding it as a signal, I said. Let's see if there's any answer. I held it as he had done and stared out into the darkness of the night. I could vaguely discern the black bank of trees and the lighter expanse of the moor because the moon was behind the clouds. And then I gave a cry of exultation, for a tiny pinpoint of yellow light had suddenly transfixed the dark veil and glowed steadily in the center of the black square framed by the window. And there we are, I said. No, sir, it's nothing, nothing, the butler said. I assure you. Move your light across the window, Watson, said Sir Henry. See, the other one moves also. Now, you rascal, he said, turning to Stapleton. Do you deny that's a signal? Come on, speak up. Who's your confederate out there? And what is this conspiracy that's going on? The butler's face became openly defiant. It's my business and not yours. I'm not telling. Then you can leave my employment right now. Very good, if I must. You go in disgrace. By thunder, you might well be ashamed of yourself. Your family has lived with mine for over 100 years under this roof, and here I find you deep in some plot against me. No, sir, not against you. It was a woman's voice, and Mrs. Barrymore, paler and more horror-struck than her husband, was standing at the door. Her bulky figure in a shawl and skirt might have been comedic if it weren't for the intensity on her face. We have to go, Eliza. This is the end of it. Go pack our things, said Stapleton. Oh, John, have I brought you to this? It's my doing, Sir Henry, all mine. He's done nothing except for my sake and because I asked him. Speak up. What does it mean? Said Sir Henry. My brother. He is starving on the moor. We can't let him die at our very gates. The light is a signal to him that food is ready, and his light out yonder is to show the spot where we bring it. Then your brother is? The escaped convict, sir. The criminal Selden. That's the proof, said Barrymore. I said it wasn't my secret and I couldn't tell it to you, but now you've heard it, and you'll see if it was a plot, it wasn't against you. So this, then, was the explanation of the stealthy expeditions at night and the light at the window. Sir Henry and I both stared at the woman in amazement. Was it possible that this respectable person was of the same blood as one of the most notorious criminals of the country? Yes, sir, she said. My name was Selden, and he's my younger brother. We humored him too much when he was a boy and gave him his own way in everything until he came to think that the world was made for his pleasure and that he could do what he liked. Then, as he grew older, he met up with wicked companions, and the devil entered into him until he broke my mother's heart and dragged our name through the dirt. From crime to crime, he sank lower and lower until it is only the mercy of God that snatched him away from the hangman. But to me, sir, he was always the curly-haired boy that I nursed and played with as an older sister would. That's why he broke out of prison, sir. He knew that I was here and that we could not refuse to help him. When he dragged himself here one night, tired and starving, with the warden's heart on his heels, what could we do? We took him in, and we fed him and cared for him, and then you returned, sir. And my brother thought he would be safer on the moor than any place else until the manhunt was over. So he lay in hiding there, but every other night we made sure that he was still there by putting a light in the window, and if there was an answer, then my husband took him bread and meat. Every day we hoped that he was gone, but as long as he's out there, we can't desert him. That's the whole truth, as I am an honest woman, and you'll see if there's any blame, it's not with my husband, but with me. The woman's words came with an intense earnestness, which proved her conviction. Is this true? It is, sir. Every word of it. Well, I can't blame you for standing by your wife. Forget what I said. Go to your room and we'll talk about this matter in the morning. When they were gone, we looked out of the window again. Sir Henry flung it open, and the cold night air beat on our faces. Far away in the distance, there still glowed that one tiny point of yellow. It's a wonder that he dares, said Sir Henry. It might be placed only to be visible from here, I said. Likely. How far away do you think it is? Out by the Cleft Tor, I think. Mile or two? Hardly that, I said. Well, it can't be far if Barrymore had to carry food to it. And he's out there waiting, this villain by the candle. By thunder, Watson, I'm going to go take the man. The same thought had crossed my mind. It was not as if the Barrymores had taken us into their confidence. Their secret had been forced out of them. The man was a danger to the community, an unmitigated scoundrel for whom there was neither pity or excuse. We were only doing our duty in taking this chance of putting him back where he could do no harm. With his brutal, violent nature, others would have to pay the price if we held our hand. At any night, for example, our neighbors, the Stapletons, could be attacked by him. It might have been this thought which made Sir Henry keen upon the adventure. I'll come, I said. Then get your revolver and put on your boots. The sooner we start, the better. The fellow may put his light away and be off any minute. So in 5 minutes, we were outside the door, starting our expedition. We hurried through the dark shrubbery, amid the dull moaning of the autumn wind and the rustle of the leaves. The night air was heavy, and the smell of damp and decay filled it. Now and then the moon peeked out for an instant, but clouds were driving over the face of the sky as we came out on the moor, and a thin rain began to fall. But the light still burned steadily in front of us. Are you armed? I asked. I have a hunting crop. We're going to have to close on him rapidly, for he's said to be a desperate fellow. We'll take him by surprise and have him at our mercy before he can resist, I said. I say, Watson, said Sir Henry, what would Holmes say to this? How about that hour of darkness in which the power of evil is exalted? As if in answer to his words, there rose suddenly out of the gloom that strange cry that I had already heard upon the borders of the great Grimpen Mire. It came with the wind through the silence of the night, a long, deep mutter, then a rising howl, and then the sad moan with which it died away. Again and again it sounded, the whole air throbbing with it, wild and menacing. Sir Henry caught my sleeve, and his face glimmered white. God, what was that, Watson? I don't know, I said. It is a sound they have on the moor. I've heard it already. The sound died, and absolute silence closed in on us. We stood straining our ears, but nothing else came. Watson, said Sir Henry, it was the cry of a dog. My blood ran cold in my veins, for there was a break in his voice that told of the sudden horror that had gripped him. What do they call this sound? He asked me. Who? The country folk. Oh, they're ignorant. Why do you care what they call it? Tell me, Watson, what do they say? I hesitated, but I couldn't escape his question. They say it's the cry of the Hound of the Baskervilles. At that, he groaned and was silent for a moment. A hound it was, he finally said, but it seemed to come from miles away, over there, I think. I couldn't tell where it came from. It rose and fell with the wind. Isn't that where the great Grimpen Mire is? Yes. Well, it was up there. Come now, Watson, didn't you think yourself it was the cry of a hound? I'm not a child. You don't need to fear speaking the truth. Stapleton was with me when I heard it the first time. He said it might be the call of a strange bird. No, it was a hound. My God, could there be truth to these stories? Do you think I could really be in danger? You don't believe this, do you, Watson? No. And yet it was something to laugh about in London. Totally different to stand out here in the darkness of the moor and hear that cry. And my uncle, there was the footprint of the hound beside him where he lay. It all fits. I don't think I'm a coward, Watson, but that sound seemed to freeze my blood. Touch my hand. It was as cold as a block of ice. You'll be all right tomorrow? I said. I don't think I'm going to get that thing out of my head. What do you think we should do now? Should we turn back? No. No, by thunder. We've come out to get our man, and we're going to do it.
Christine, pause your recording.
I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that interruption. Had to deal with a minor medical emergency. Everything is fine. But we're going to jump back in, and we're feeling Sir Henry's hand. It was cold as a block of marble. You'll be all right tomorrow, I said. I don't think I'll get that cry out of my head. What do you think we should do now? I already read this part. Oh, well. Shall we turn back? No, by thunder. We've come out to get our man, and we're going to do it. We're after the convict, and a hellhound, as like as not, is after us. Come on. We'll see it through, if all the fiends of hell were loose upon the moor. And so we stumbled along in the darkness, with the black loom of the craggy hills around us, and that yellow speck of light burning steadily in front. There is nothing as deceptive as the distance of a light upon a pitch-dark night, and sometimes the glimmer seemed to be far upon the horizon, and sometimes it was within a few yards. But at last we could see where it came from, and then we knew we were indeed quite close. There was a guttering candle stuck into a crevice of the rocks, which flanked it on either side so as to keep the wind away from it, and also to prevent it from being visible from any direction save that of Baskerville Hall. A boulder of granite hid our approach, and crouching behind it, we gazed over at the signal light. It was strange to see this single candle burning here in the middle of the moor with no sign of life anywhere around it. Just one straight yellow flame and the gleam of rocks to either side. "What should we do now?" said Sir Henry. "Wait," I told him. "He must be near his light. Let's see if we can get a glimpse." Those words were hardly out of my mouth when we both saw him. Over the rocks, in the crevice of which the candle burned, there was thrust out an evil face, a terrible animalistic face, all seamed and sored with its vile passions, befouled with mire, with a bristling beard, and hung all around with matted hair. It might well have belonged to one of those old savages who dwelt in the burrows on the hillsides. The light below him was reflected in his small, cunning eyes, which peered fiercely right and left in the darkness, like a crafty, savage animal that's heard the footsteps of hunters. Something had evidently aroused his suspicions. It may have been that Barrymore had some private signal that we had neglected to give, or maybe he had some other reason for thinking that all was not well, but I could see his fears upon his wicked face. At any moment he might dash out the light and vanish into the darkness. Therefore I sprang forward, and Sir Henry did the same. At the same moment the convict screamed out a curse at us and threw a rock which splintered up against the boulder that had been sheltering us. I caught one glimpse of his short, squat, strongly built figure as he sprang to his feet and turned to run. At that same moment, by lucky chance, the moon broke through the clouds, and we rushed over the brow of the hill, and there was our man running with great speed down the other side, springing over the stones in his way with the activity of a mountain goat. A lucky shot of my revolver might have crippled him, but I had brought it only to defend myself if attacked, and not to shoot an unarmed man who was running away. Thankfully, we were both swift runners and in fairly good training. Unfortunately, we soon found that we had no chance at all to overtake him. We saw him for a long time in the moonlight, until he was just a small speck moving quickly among the boulders upon the side of a distant hill. We ran and ran and ran until we were completely winded, but the space between us grew ever wider. Finally, we stopped and sat panting on two rocks, all the while watching him disappear in the distance. And it was at this moment that there occurred a most strange and unexpected thing. We had risen from our rocks and were turning to go home, having abandoned the chase. The moon was low upon the right, and the jagged pinnacle of a granite tor stood up against the lower curve of its silver disk. There, outlined as black as an ebony statue upon that shining background, I saw a figure of a man upon the tor. Don't think it was a delusion, Holmes. I assure you I have never in my life seen anything as clearly. As far as I could judge, the figure was that of a tall, thin man. He stood with his legs a little separated, his arms folded, his head bowed, as if he were brooding over that enormous wilderness of peat and granite in front of him. He might have been the very spirit of that place. It was not the convict. This man was far from the place where the latter had disappeared, and besides, he was much taller. With a cry of surprise, I pointed him out to Sir Henry, but in the instant during which I had turned to grasp his arm, the man was gone. There was the sharp pinnacle of granite still cutting the lower edge of the moon, but the peak bore no trace of that silent figure. I wanted to go in that direction and to search the tor, but it was some distance away. Sir Henry's nerves were still quivering from that cry, which recalled the dark story of his family, and he was not in the mood for fresh adventure. He had not seen this lonely man on the tor, and could not feel the thrill which his presence and his commanding attitude had given to me. "A warder, no doubt," he said. "The moor has been thick with them since that fellow escaped." Well, perhaps his explanation is the right one, but I should like to have some further proof of that. Today we mean to communicate with the Princeton people where they should look for their missing man, but It's hard lines that we have not actually had the triumph of bringing him back as our own prisoner. Such are the adventures of last night. And you must acknowledge, Holmes, that I have done you very well in the matter of a report. Much of what I tell you is no doubt irrelevant, but still, I feel that it is best that I should let you have all the facts and leave you to select for yourself those which will be of the most service to you in helping you come to your conclusions. We're certainly making progress. So far as the Barrymores go, we have found the motive of their actions, and that has cleared up the situation very much. But the moor, with its mysteries and its strange inhabitants, remains as inscrutable as ever. Perhaps in my next report I may be able to throw some light upon this as well. But best of all would be if you could come down to us. In any case, you will hear from me again in the course of the next couple of days. And that is the end of the chapter. Bum, bum, bum. I don't know how casual I would be about any of this, especially not finding out that the supposed convicted and escaped killer is possibly lurking around, unless maybe he's innocent. There's always that chance. Doesn't seem like it, but there's always at least that chance. Much respect to Watson for not shooting the man while he was running. I was a little bit afraid that given the times that was going to be the fate of this escaped convict. Thankfully it wasn't. Anyway, thank you as always for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that chapter. It was a long one, and I will see you tomorrow.